4, 3.
Welcome to the Through the Lane podcast. Your co-host Lane. Today we have a guest, Thomas, our resident Steeler and LSU fan.
Thank you for having me.
The Steelers have had an eventful week and a half.
They have. It's been fun. It's been the first time they've been active in free agency in a long time.
What do you think about Russell Wilson being there?
He's cheap. 1 year, like $2 million. I'm perfectly cool with it. I know they're planning to. A report came out that they're planning to sign him to a longer term deal after this year. We'll see what that ends up being, but I'm cool with it. It's a step up over Kenny Pickett and what we had before, for
Y'all
sure.
Completely overhauled that quarterback room.
I know. We went from Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, to Russell Wilson, and Mitch Trubisky. I almost forgot about him, to Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. That is a big leap
change.
For sure. And we did it for cheap too. I was impressed. I was like, we gave up a 6th-round pick.
6th-round pick
Might become a 4th-round pick
if he plays over half the snaps, which he probably won't.
Probably won't. And then Russell Wilson for basically nothing. I was impressed. Steelers don't normally do that in free agency. They're normally pretty quiet, but it was good to see them finally realize they had to change something and move on from Kenny Pickett.
Now y'all did get rid of that one receiver,
Deontay Johnson. Yeah, that was a little rough. Dante Jackson, he's a good, I guess, backup cornerback, probably a good depth piece, but they'll have to do something in the draft or trade. I don't know if we can just roll in with Joey Porter Jr. and Dante Jackson as our cornerbacks. That was rough, but we were paying him $18 million. That's a good $18 million to get rid of. I don't think he was playing up to that $18 million cap hit, but that was a little rough trade, but we'll take it.
And y'all, like, this receiver class in the draft is pretty deep, so.
Yeah, Rome Odunze, Malik Neighbors, and Brian Thomas are probably the three number one guys, or the 3 top guys that'll
and
go
Marvin Harrison.
Marvin Harrison Jr., how could I forget about him? I don't know if we'll take a receiver in the draft. I don't want to go first-round receiver. I feel like we do that. We're pretty okay at receiver. I think we have enough pieces there. I don't know if you saw, but Brandon Ayuk tweeted out that him and Coach Tomlin were twins, and then it was reported that the Steelers have been pressing pretty hard for Brandon Ayuk. So I don't know if it'll get done. I know he needs a new contract, but I think they're in the market for one. I definitely think they'll get their wide receiver 3 in free agency, and then we'll see what happens in the draft, see what they go with.
Now y'all could get T. Higgins or Tyler Boyd.
T. Higgins would be a steep kind of
trade price.
Yeah, trade price. I know they franchise tagged him, so it's like a sign and trade. So we have to give up stuff and then give up money for him. Tyler Boyd would be good. I know he's from Pittsburgh. He's a veteran. He could really fill that wide receiver 3 spot. And I know Calvin Austin didn't get a lot of playing time last year, but I think he could step into kind of that slot, wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 role too.
And
quick guy.
Hopefully George Pickens gets used properly and
I know.
Gets the ball thrown to him.
I know. He's a great player. I think he had, I don't know the exact numbers, but he had like 50 catches for 1,000 yards, which is crazy. That is a small amount of catches and a lot of yards.
With 3 starting quarterbacks.
Yeah, 3 starting quarterbacks too. So I think, and Russell Wilson is known for his deep ball. He struggles over the middle, but he has a great deep ball. So I think that'll be a good pairing.
Outside the hashes too. Yeah. Get it down there.
I know. Yeah. Mike Williams was also, Pittsburgh was pursuing him, and I'm glad they didn't get him. I don't think 2 deep ball threats would really work well. We need somebody who can work the middle of the field.
Well, $15 million for Mike Williams, who can't stay healthy.
Yeah,
for the life of him.
That was rough. I think he'll do good on the Jets. Aaron Rodgers will probably treat him well, but not worth $15 million in my opinion.
For a guy that gets hurt that often.
I know. Older guy too.
Yeah, he's up there
on the back end of his career, but
the Chargers cleared house too.
They did. They have. I don't know what they're going to do at receiver. I don't know when they pick. I know they're probably early, but they'll have to take a receiver for sure.
Have to.
First thing in the draft. I think Brian Thomas, I don't know when they pick in the draft, but I think Brian Thomas is a sleeper pick. I mean, he's tall, he's fast. He ran like a 4.4 in the draft. He's like 6'3", 6'4". He's going to be a steal in the draft for sure.
Keon Coleman's a guy too.
Keon Coleman definitely. He might sneak into the first round, but if he falls to the second round, whoever gets him, absolute steal.
Yeah, they got a future number 1.
For real.
And then you see what the Bills did?
What did the Bills do?
Completely clear out their secondary.
That's right. Jordan Poyer, and they got rid of both safeties,
Yeah,
didn't they?
Tre'Davious. I think his name's Tre'Davious White.
Tre'Davious White, yeah, he played at LSU. I remember him. Yeah, they're gonna struggle too. I don't know what they've done to replace, but they're gonna have to pray some draft picks step up on day one for sure.
And hope. 'Cause I don't know if they had their first this year.
They might not.
I
know
think it's part of Minnesota, maybe.
maybe. I know they gave up a lot for Diggs. That was a while ago. You think
Yeah.
they gave picks up that late? It was what, 3 years ago? They traded for
Possibly.
Diggs.
Because I think they were hoping they'd at least win a Super Bowl by now.
I know their window's starting to close. Allen's finally his extension is hit, so he's owed like $45 million. His cap hit's big. Diggs, his cap hit's big. So I mean, they kind of, I think the ideal scenario is you win while they're on their rookie contract while they're cheap and you can build around them. But now they're going to have to figure out whatever the Chiefs did to win with Patrick Mahomes on a big contract is what they're going to have to do.
Yeah, which is hit on like every secondary pick.
Mm-hmm.
And then have like, I think it's Khalil Elam become like Ladarius Sneed.
Mm-hmm. Just pop up out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if they have their first round pick this year, they're going to have to hit, and he's going to have to play well if they want to compete.
Well, they don't have a center anymore because they cut Mitch Morris, and then they're down to just pretty much Stephon Diggs. They lost Gabe Davis.
Yeah, Gabe Davis went to the Jaguars. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're building just straight wide receiver twos. No wide receiver ones. Gabe Davis. Calvin Ridley went back, and I think Christian Kirk is over there as well. Still.
Calvin Ridley went to the Titans.
That's right. He went to the Titans. I remember Steelers were looking at Calvin Ridley, and then he signed, what was it? It's like $96 million?
Yeah, 4 years, 96.
And I was like, cool. Glad we didn't pay
Yeah,
that.
that is almost 20
that was
mil.
a lot. Yeah.
For a guy that's played one season, 2 years.
Yeah, definitely. But I think it was tough. The cap casualties are always rough. I know Justin Simmons is still out there. I think his asking price is too high, I think is why he hasn't been signed. I think he's asking for a lot. But I'd love to see Pittsburgh get him. But I wouldn't, if the money's right, I could see the Bills pouncing on that to try and reclaim some of their secondary because it's going to be rough next year for them.
Well, especially in the division they play in.
Yeah. Let's see. You got the Jets. Jets and Miami. Those will be 4 games they play. That'll be very rough as far as like air raid type offenses.
Patriots.
A lot of Patriots too. The Patriots going to be good though.
They're going to get a top quarterback.
That's true. What are they looking at? Drake May?
They go number 2, I think. So it'd be Caleb Williams, Drake May, or Jaden Daniels.
Jaden Daniels. I think Drake May fits. The Bears, I just don't think they can pass on Caleb Williams. I mean, the hype around him's too much. It's one of those things where it's like, if you try and get, too cool with it and think too hard and don't take him, if whoever you take doesn't become a top 5 quarterback, people are going to look back on it.
Yourself.
Yeah, it's gonna look terrible. But it's also kind of the, it's kind of like the Browns and Baker Mayfield. Like Baker Mayfield had a ton of hype. Like they just had to take him. They had to take that swing and hope for the best. And I think the Bears are going to have to do the same. I think you have to take Caleb Williams. I don't think there's any way around it.
Well, there's questions because pretty much he kind of blew out the second half of the USC season. He struggled bad. And then just the way he handled it, he didn't seem like he was very competitive. And then the way he's handled the whole draft process where he's like, I'm not doing much of anything for measurables. I think that's rubbing teams wrong.
Yeah, I think I don't have an issue so much with him being like, I'm not going to do the medical stuff because he was right. I mean, he's like, why am I going to do a physical with 32 teams when there's realistically only 2 or 3 teams that are going to take me? Because I mean, he knows he's going early, so I mean, I understand that. But I think towards the end of the season, it definitely got really rough as far as people kind of paint the hole when he's crying with his mom. I think that shows he cares about the game and he does have passion for it. But I think, I mean, they started the season top 10, and I mean they just nosedived after about halfway through the season, bad loss. And I don't think USC was a very good team, but I don't think, it's one thing where it's like, LSU wasn't a good team, but Jaden Daniels was still balling out on offense. I don't think USC was a good team, and Caleb Williams didn't look like he did, specifically in the second half of the season, that he did a lot to elevate them.
Yeah.
Late in the season. So, I mean, he might have kind of, given up. He's starting to think about the draft, think about taking care of his body. Because there is a big difference between, going number 1 overall and going number 5 overall as far as money.
Yeah, a lot of money.
So, I mean, I think he'll be a great prospect. I don't know if he's generational, as they've labeled him, but I think he'll do well for the Bears, especially if they can build a cast around him. I know they got DeAndre Swift. They've kind of bolstered up the line. They did lose Darnell Mooney, but they still have DJ Moore, and they got Keenan Allen. So I think he has pieces around him that are established that can help win now for the Bears, and at least show flashes.
Yeah, I like Jaden Daniels as the number 1. I think.
Really?
Yeah, 72% completion percentage, like 4,000 yards passing, 1,000 yards rushing, and in the SEC.
He is elite. He is a good runner. I know this is a weird concern, but I do have concerns about how he takes care of his body. He took a lot of big hits. He's going to have to learn to slide and kind of do what Lamar Jackson did, where he's still a threat as a runner, but he's not sprinting full speed down the field per se. He's kind of more of elusive. He's kind of more agile. He's not taking as many hits. He's sliding more. He's getting out of bounds. I think he's going to have to do that if he wants to have a long career in the NFL.
Yeah, because he's dealt with a decent bit of ankle injury since he's come to LSU.
Yeah, he had an ankle injury in the season, and he was always banged up. He just something, he'd take a big hit, and then he's out of series, but then he's back in, and those add up, especially in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want, especially with ankle injuries, I mean, they linger. It's tough to, if you don't heal it right, it's easy to re-injure. I think the biggest thing, he's going to have to take care of his body. I think he has great pocket presence. He does avoid hits in the pocket because he's such an elusive runner. But when he gets to that second level, it's just like, as an LSU fan, you're just like praying he doesn't get smacked. I don't know if you remember the Ole Miss hit.
No.
Ole Miss, he got rocked. I mean, like, stood up. I mean, he's standing straight up and got hit. And, I mean, he, like, animation and everything, like, flies back. Ball flies, like, 10 yards behind him. I mean, he got right. He got up, but, I mean, you don't want to see, especially if you're one of the teams that use their, top 10 pick on Jaden Daniels, you don't want to see him take those hits.
Yeah, he kind of tries to, like, Cam Newton it, where he kind of just tries to bulldoze his way through. And he doesn't have the build for it.
Yeah, he's tall, he's skinny, but he's fast. He doesn't have the Cam Newton build for sure.
Yeah, and he's got a good arm.
He does have a good arm. I don't think it's anywhere near what Drake May or Caleb Williams has, but he has great touch.
Yeah.
When he throws the ball downfield, it is on target. I don't know if he can air it out 60, 70 yards like Caleb Williams can, but, when he puts a 50-yard pass down the field, it's going to get there and it's going to be on point.
Speaking of LSU, you're an LSU fan. How do y'all think y'all are going to do next year?
I think it comes down to Garrett Nussmeier. I think how he produces, he's got a cannon of an arm, an absolute missile. So I don't think arm talent is the question. I think it's going to be how he gels with the receiver room, who did take a hit. Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas were both LSU receivers. I think those are going to be tough losses. Kyron Lacey's coming back, and then it's kind of a committee group. I know we have some 4 and 5 stars coming in. Those are guys you don't know how they're going to fit in first year. You don't know. I mean, they're going to get playing time, but you don't know how they're going to perform per se. The offensive line stayed intact. We had a great offensive line last year. It's only going to get better. Defense, oh Lord, defense is going to be interesting. I think they've learned from their mistakes. They really cleared house. They did bring back Corey Coleman, who was the defensive backs coach a few years ago for us, mainly kind of in like that mid-2000s LSU where they had really good corners and really good defenses. They brought him back. I have hope that he'll be able to train up a lot of the corners and, at least get to a point where we're not playing 10 yards off the ball every play, where, we just don't have the talent to play press man like we really should be doing against teams like Bama and Georgia and I guess now Texas and Oklahoma, who are going to be in the SEC. But I think we'll be better than last year. I don't know if we're ready to compete for a championship, though. That's going to fall on Garrett Nussmeier.
Yeah, the SEC's going to be stacked.
Yeah, it's going to be rough.
Y'all need a good running back, too.
We do. It's I think Logan Diggs is going to the draft. He came from Notre Dame. He played really well. A lot of the skill positions on offense are kind of, it's going to be by committee. Like a lot of times going into the season, you have that guy, who's going to start as long as they're healthy. We don't really have that luxury. I mean, at receiver, I know Kyron Lacey will start, but Aaron Anderson will probably start just based off of seniority, and he's been with the team for an extra year, as opposed to all the freshmen. So I think those skill positions and the quarterback position will really determine how the season goes. I think Garrett Nussmeier will play well, but I don't know if he's going to be Ellis. We've kind of been spoiled. We had Joe Burrow, and then we kind of had a lull, and then we had Jaden Daniels. So I don't know if we're going to ever see Garrett Nussmeier rise to that Heisman level, where we just have a killer offense. But I think we'll be more balanced this year for sure.
Yeah, he's got a cannon, and he's a lefty too, which is weird.
He is, yeah. Or I think, yeah, he is a lefty. It's a pretty ball too. It's always fun to watch lefties throw. It's different. I worry about his accuracy. I mean, he's got a cannon, but he does have a tendency to look for the big play when he should just take the check down or take the short slant. He knows he has a cannon. He wants every play to be a big play, and maybe that was just the bowl game. He was in. It was a meaningless game, so he's like, I'm gonna just air it out. But I think he's going to have to be more. I think he's going to have to make better decisions too, as far as when to take the deep ball and when to just take the check down, take the 4 yards, and play another down.
Hopefully, y'all know how to use Harold Perkins too. That was infuriating watching him.
Yeah, I think he's going to stay at that rover linebacker position. I think he is undersized as far as an edge rusher, but I think they're gonna put him more in blitz packages. And he's going to get downhill after the quarterback war, but I think it's going to come from a lot of different spots as opposed to just being a pure edge rusher. But I agree with you. It was frustrating watching him just be in coverage and not know what he was doing when you know how good he is as an edge rusher.
And he doesn't have good footwork as in coverage.
Yeah, I don't think he had ever. I'm sure he played it some in high school, but he had never played that before. He got swapped to that position, that kind of rover hybrid linebacker end. And I think they're doing that because that's probably what he'll play when he goes to the NFL. And they're probably doing that, to help him for his career. But I think, in the Alabama game, Jalen Milroe was running all over us. And the whole time you were there, you were watching the game with me, and we were screaming, you got the fastest defensive player in the country. Put him as a spy.
Yeah.
Please, for the love of God, stop letting this quarterback run all over. And they never did it. And then Brian Kelly in the post-game presser was like, we probably should have put a spy. And I'm just like, hands in my face. I'm like, really? You don't think?
Could have told you that after the first half.
For real. I couldn't believe it. But I think they've gotten smarter. I think they cleared house on defense. I think they've got some better personnel in there. And they're killing it on the recruiting trail. 2024 and 2025 are going to be some big classes for us. I think we have the number 1 class in 2025 right now. So, I mean, Brian Kelly's recruiting is just a matter of developing that talent.
Well, he's always been a great recruiter. I mean, I remember his time at Notre Dame. They were always one of the top recruiting teams in the nation. It's just offensively he's always struggled.
Yeah, he always had the talent. I mean, he was always in the thick of it for a championship. He was always there. He just never put it together. I still do worry about that, about big games, but he did beat Alabama his first year, which I was like, maybe this can be different. Let's see about it. But I think he has more access to talent than he does at Notre Dame, and he has more funding and more tools at his disposal. I think he'll get the job done. I don't think it'll be this year, but in the near future, I could see him putting together a championship team.
Yeah, because I wouldn't say there's a clear above and away top team in the SEC. I think you'd have Georgia and Alabama, and then you have a second tier of Ole Miss, LSU, Texas, Oklahoma, schools like that, because Texas lost both their receivers, and I think their D tackle, and I think maybe their running back. So,
yeah, who was it? Who was their running back? Do you remember?
I think it's Ja'Cory Brooks or something.
Yeah, Texas lost a lot of talent, and Oklahoma's kind of been in limbo since losing Lincoln Riley. I think they'll get it back. I think Brent Venables will get them straight. But I think Georgia and Alabama. I hate that Alabama's still up there, but Georgia and Alabama are definitely. I would even put Georgia above Alabama, and then tier 1 Georgia, tier 2 Alabama. I think the Washington head coach will be. I know a lot of Alabama fans are. You can't replace Nick Saban, but I think he'll be. I think he will have. I don't think there'll be a big gap in between. They might have a lull this year. They'll probably be top 25, but I don't think there'll be a big gap in between when they're back competing for championships.
Well, and they just got back that offensive lineman that started as a freshman last year, Proctor. He's transferring back from Iowa to Alabama, which
I saw that. That was interesting. I don't know. I'd love to hear the background at why that happened.
Yeah, the transfer portal was wild because they had that quarterback who had just signed, then proceeded to transfer out. Julian Sayin, I think is his name. So,
yeah, it's messed with college football, and I think the biggest issue is they try and keep it in line with the academic year because student athletes, and it leads to you have people transferring out in like early December. It's like there's still football to be played. You still have bowl games and the championship games. So I think that's the biggest issue with it, but it is definitely, it's weird. I have no clue how the eligibility stuff works. I don't know how you can transfer to Iowa and then transfer back to Alabama and still be eligible in the same season, but those decisions are made.
How you can retransfer, because I know there was a guy, he transferred to Georgia, and then the next day he transferred to USC, and I was like, how does the paperwork even filled out in one day? Yeah.
I have no clue. That's handled by some mysterious board that we don't ever hear from.
But it's not that good as of late. They've opened Pandora's box.
Yeah, and I know there was a North Carolina receiver that had like all sorts of trouble. It was like a personal story. Like he was, trying to play in front of his family, and the NCAA was just like, no, you're not playing. Even though like he fit most of the requirements, but there was some like technicality. It's super messed up. They got to figure it out.
And then like after like 4 games, they're like, okay, now you can play. And it's like,
yeah, and he comes in halfway through the season. It's just like, what?
And he
changed?
struggled too.
I would struggle too. I was, just probably thinking, his college career's done, and then they're like, why not? You can play.
Here you go.
Yeah. Good luck.
Have fun with it.
It's all sorts of messed up, but I think they'll figure it out eventually. I think something's got to give. It'll either get fixed or it'll completely ruin college football. One of the two. Hopefully the latter.
And NIL is going to be probably the downfall.
It is. I think my dad talks about this. Eventually, I think it'll split. I mean, there'll be like a league of like 30 teams like the NFL that are, the top teams. And then you'll have everyone else. Because, all that money, of course, teams like UCLA and, like mid-major teams get funding. But, Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Texas, Oklahoma, all those, like, elite schools have, like, infinite money. If you're a top prospect, there's almost no reason to go to a school like UCLA or go to a school like Texas Tech or even a school like Texas A&M, who's like a middle-of-the-road SEC school. There's no reason to go there.
Yeah, and you're starting to see conferences fall. Pac-12, it's like semi-falling, but there's like some teams holding it alive. The ACC is now going down what happened to the Pac-12 last year, where Florida State and Clemson have both sued the ACC, which is wild in itself to see both those teams trying to jump ship.
Yeah, it's rough. Whenever the ACC will hold on till Clemson and Florida State figure out how to get out of their contract, and then once they get out, it'll be Miami will leave, and then that leaves what? Duke, North Carolina.
I think North Carolina State, Syracuse.
That's not a conference right there. That's not a good conference anyway. And the SEC will get all of them. Clemson will go to the SEC. Florida State will. Miami will. I could see in 5-10 years the SEC just being the conference as all anyone cares about.
Yeah, because it's going to pretty much be the SEC, and then I think it's the Big Ten up north, which are the two conferences that are kind of just gathering talent, gathering schools, and you're starting to see the coastal conferences kind of die off.
Yeah, and it's sad too because you won't get a lot of those rivalries like those like Clemson, South Carolina might stay, but a lot of those those rivalries within, conferences will be gone. Like Texas won't play Texas Tech anymore. Texas and Texas A&M will play. But, I mean, a lot of those kind of, they're not big rivalries, but, the fans still care. The teams still care. Those rivalries are done.
Yeah. It's kind of just those in-state rivalries that are just big for the people there.
Yeah.
And we go on.
It's gonna be rough. It'll be the SEC and Big Ten, and then eventually I'm sure they'll merge, and it'll just be one big super conference, and that'll be all anybody cares about.
I hope it doesn't go that way, but
I don't see how you stop it, because, I mean, unless the NCAA comes in and is like, whoa, guys, watch out, we're going to put a stop to this, there's nothing really stopping them. Because, I mean, it's all about the money for a lot of these schools. And, I mean, the TV deals will follow to the SEC. And, I mean, especially the top Big Ten schools, Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, I mean, they will definitely do their best to get out. I don't think it'll be soon, like in the next couple years, but I think eventually they'll have to if they want to truly like compete and make a lot of money.
Yeah, and the playoff committee pretty much killed the ACC with the decision with FSU, which then left Clemson to be like, well, it's probably time for us to dip as well.
Yeah, I think it's just going to be tough, especially because they put such a value on strength of schedule. I mean, the ACC is just not going to have the strength of schedule. I mean, they're going to have Clemson and Florida State. Those are going to be the only two worthwhile teams. Every now and then Miami might pop in.
And North Carolina.
And North Carolina might be a top 25 team. But, I mean, you look at the SEC. I mean, if you go 12-0 or even 11-1 or 10-2, I mean, you've probably got to win against a top 10 team, maybe two top 10 teams, and, you lost to the number one team in the country.
Yeah, by like a few points.
Yeah, by like 3 points. We can't really hold that against you per se. I mean, if anything, it hurts you, but it doesn't hurt you as bad as, Clemson losing to, number 22 Duke by like 10 points. So I think it's going to be weird. It's going to be really weird to see how it plays out, especially with the 12-team playoff.
Well, did you see they're already moving it to a 14-team in 2 years?
I did see that. I don't know. We just might as well start the season as a playoff and just, like, whittle our way down,
It's going to get ridiculous because there's never going to be anybody that's happy with it because they'll be like the 13th team or in 2 years the 15th team. They're just like, well, you could make the argument, and it's like there's no one's going to be happy.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be rough. And I don't know how many games it'll extend this season because I don't know if they're planning to chop a game off. One of the out-of-conference games, we're just not going to play it anymore. But, you get to a point where it's like you don't want these college kids playing, 16 games a season, and then it goes through, and then it follows the Super Bowl timeline. And you have, college football seasons ending like first week of February. And it's going to really, I think, mess up the schedule, too. If you add too many extra playoff games to it, it'll really mess it up.
They probably need to go back to the BCS way of doing it in the way of putting teams in that top 12 and top 14 because it's so biased now. Mm-hmm. Because you can tell this past year was kind of biased with needing an SEC team and kind of kicking Florida State out. Yeah. And, having Bama put in. Florida State being left out was massive, which then spurs the 12 team. And then I don't even know what started this 14 team. But
yeah. I will say, I know Florida State, you can talk about they deserve to be in, but I do agree with the committee. You lose your starting quarterback, and the guy comes in and he doesn't look very good. It's hard to argue that without your starting quarterback, you're the fourth best team in the country. I think they deserve to be in. I think, on paper they did, but losing your starting quarterback is, a big thing to consider. It's not like LSU where you kind of have Garrett Nussmeier who has shown talent and has played well, and you're like, well, they could still compete with him. I mean, whoever Florida State's backup with came in, and they barely won their bowl game. I mean, it was rough. Now, if he'd come in and they had laid it on him and put up 45, and you're like, whoa, this guy might be better, then yeah. But I think...
Well, that was their third-string guy that played in the conference game because the second string got a concussion, but he was going to be ready after the conference.
That's right.
And he looked solid. I mean, he didn't look like Jordan Travis, but he looked good. And then he ended up transferring out. That third-string guy was bad. I mean,
not good.
It was rough in the conference game, and then when he played Georgia, the poor dude got thrown to the wolves and just struggled.
Yeah, it was. I don't necessarily disagree with their decision, but I think I don't know. It's tough. I could really go either way, but if they had put him in, I would have been okay with it. If they didn't, like they did, I'm okay with it. But I think they need to come out with strict rules for how they do it, because every year it's kind of changed. Like, I don't know if you remember, but like they used to really value strength of schedule. Now they look at the eye test and, well, how's this team,
and injuries
and injuries now, which was something that never really popped up before. Was star player, your best quarterback gets hurt, how does that affect your playoff chances?
Yeah, so. Putting teams in like TCU, Notre Dame, there's another one, Cincinnati. You're just looking at it, it's like teams that should not have been in, but they deserved it, and then all of a sudden this year you're like, well, I know for the past 6 years we've done where they've deserved it, but we're going to change it up and do injuries and eye test.
Yeah, and I do like that, like the chairman of the committee comes out and kind of talks about it more than it used to do that, but they got to like come out with a stricter test for how they're ranking these teams
and stick to it.
And stick to it. That's a big thing, because like you said, it was strength of schedule and the paper test, and now they're looking at injuries and the eye test and looking at the film and going, well, yeah, they only won by 3, but they looked great, so we're going to rank them higher.
Yeah.
But
I think that's all for today's episode. Thank you, Thomas. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Hope you've enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it a lot. I'd love to come back if you'll have me.
Oh, for sure. Probably with Carmine on here too. So
cool.
I think that's all for today's episode.
Sweet. Thank you, guys.